We want to ensure that this session is very, very crisp when you listen to it a second time. So thank you all once more. My name is Chidi Colesworth, and I'm the founder here at Donors for Africa Foundation. So why did we launch the African Women in Development Conference? Okay, from a personal journey, right? I have been in development pretty much all my life, from my very first job to what I do presently. And even the job I had in 2016 that was supposed to be some real estate work that I was doing, inadvertently it became a work centered around supporting women, and helping women own their path and shine and things like that. We decided to launch this conference because I personally believe that it's not only founders who contribute immensely to the work we do in development. From a lot of personal experience, I'm well aware of how a lot of us work at the background. You stay up late at night, you do the research, you do all this phenomenal work that adds to the overall value your organization will experience or enjoy. And oftentimes or not, it's easy for such commitment to fall through the cracks, right? And then we also know that consistently when we celebrate women during the Women's Week, it is always a case of, permit me to say, same people are being recycled. And I strongly believe that, look, there are so many women who are doing phenomenal work. It was also as a result of the research we were conducting internally in my team. And all of a sudden, I did a quick search, 20 top African women in development. I could not find anything, nothing at all. I did another search, African women, I could not find anything. And that pretty much birthed my desire to connect and find women who were doing phenomenal work across Africa. Now, the theme for today's conference is called Advocating for Intergenerational Leadership in Development, a Call to Action. I know many of us may think that intergenerational leadership is only when someone is 70 years old and she's trying to connect with someone who is 30 years old or 25 years old. No, intergenerational leadership will also reflect in a lot of us who have millennials working for us or working on our teams. How are you supporting them to the point where in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, in the next 5 years, they are women who are confident enough to do their work? I tell everybody who cares to listen, I'm a product of I'm a product of coaching, I'm a product of mentoring, I'm a product of women telling me all my life that you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're God's daughter, you have everything it takes, and such words, reaffirmations, it did a lot for my psyche. It reminded me that, look, irrespective of what your today may look like, you actually have this fantastic future ahead of you. And that's what pretty much birthed this conference. And one of the key things we're going to be doing in today's conference is that we're going to be listening, we're going to be hearing from amazing women in development. Sorry, I'm trying to open my the profile of some of our speakers, so I'm looking at my phone. We're going to be listening or sharing or hearing the beautiful work of a lot of women in development. Guys, these are women, you see Okonjo Iweala and you're like, oh my God, I want to be like her. What did it take Okonjo Iweala, Dr. Okonjo Iweala, to get to the level that she's at? It didn't happen overnight. It was a series of activities, a series of rising and falling, a series of trials and error, doing things right, not doing things right. So we want to have an honest conversation around how can we as women who lead impact-driven organizations push beyond every self-limiting belief that we have placed on ourselves. And I say self because it starts from us. So every self-limiting belief that we have placed on ourselves, how do we push past it to occupy public positions? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not just running Donors for Africa because I don't have work to do. I'm running Donors for Africa because I am building a career in development. Like, this is a conscious, deliberate effort for me to build a career in development. And I ask myself all the time, what happens if I get, or not if, when I get called upon in the next 2-3 years, or maybe this year, to come and occupy a public office? what would happen? Am I equipped? Do I have the right skills? Do I have the right opportunity? Do I have what it takes to lead and to lead boldly, to carry on my vision from running your own private non-profit or social impact organization, to actually knowing that every decision you take as a leader has a larger impact on a larger group of people. So these women are going to challenge us from Sechem, who is Madam Sechem, permit me please, who is an economist and a manager of the UN, of the head office of the United Nations Women, to Mrs. Hajara Piton, that I truly love and admire. And I think a lot of the things I have done with my life is pretty much a reflection of the affirmations that I received from her. Up until Halima Hima, right, who is someone I met way back in 2011. And right now she's like the Minister Counselor of the Permanent Mission of the United Nations. These are women that are going to challenge us, or to Madam Moadi as well. These are women that are going to challenge us as they tell their story. So I encourage you. I'm going to be handing over to our moderator in the next few minutes, right? And the conversation would start. So I encourage you, please listen. I know we have a lot of work to do. This is why we had left this session at exactly 1 hour, including question, answers, deliberations, feedback from our speakers, celebrating our nominees. Every single thing is going to be done within an hour. So I kindly ask you to please give us an hour of your time. I assure you, our speakers are here, they are ready, they are pumped, they just can't wait to share all their journey with you. One of our speakers in particular, Madam Wadi, she's so excited to meet every single one of you. She just wants to share about her journey. And she's a phenomenal woman who has done quite a lot of work with the Africa Women Development Fund. So guys, please just listen, ask your questions. Look, these are people you may never have access to, right? So when you come in contact with them, please ask your questions. Ask your questions. Ask them anything that bothers you. How did you get this job? What did you do? This is not an inspirational session. This is not aspire to perspire. No, this is a session where we are finding out and we are learning the how to move from point A up until point B. I'm going to quickly look through the chat room and see what's going on. Thank you so much, Bukola from Girls Inspired Africa, Ifoma from Nahum Africa, Ezine Fabia from Whisker, Bologi from Bologi Stefan, she's a woman in media. Thank you for being here. Many of you are joining from Abuja, Nuri from Bangladesh, if I'm not wrong. Leah, you're joining us from Lagos as well. Ndidi, my sister Ndidi, thank you so much for all your support in putting this conference together. She's also joining from Abuja, but I know she has strong roots in Senegal, Dakar. You all are welcome, 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 welcome. So I'm going to be handing over to our our moderator for today's event, my DPP, that's what I call her. I'm going to allow her to explain that name, but her name is Mrs. Hajara Piton. Give me 1 minute to just quickly read her profile. I won't go into details so I don't bore you. She's a general counsel at Amazon Energy, but she's also the founder and the Lynch Chandelier. DPP, did I get it? I hope I did. Please correct me if I did not. Of Owambe Candles. She does phenomenal work. Where do I start from? She has done a lot of strategy work, working on programs like the Gulf of Guinea Oil and Gas Conference, UK, United Nations Institute for Training and Research, Anthony Robbins Unleash the Power Within Conference. Oh gosh, she has leadership certifications from Harvard Business School online. And she's determined to live fully. And one thing I know is that she's a passionate traveler. She desires to travel to every nation of the world at least once. Yeah, I know that one at the top of my head. DPP, you're welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chidi. Thank you. Just to confirm that you can hear and see my video properly, your screen seems to be a little frozen, Chidi. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome, awesome. Chidi, that was an awesome introduction. Thank you so very much. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so ladies, happy International Women's Month. I'm very honored to be on the call with you today and, this month. I think you all are phenomenal women. So I'm just going to, give you all a round of applause. Phenomenal, amazing women. It's an honor to be on the call with you today. And when I look at the profile of the speakers and I look at the women who, I've been looking at the comments and seeing where you're from and what you all do, I'm totally amazed. Everyone is doing great and making an impact in their world. The world is actually better because you guys are in it. That's amazing. Give yourself a pat on the back like that. Because ladies don't do that. Say well done to yourself. That's amazing. I want to give special honors to Chidi. I was there at the beginning of Chidi's journey. I was there at the beginning of the journey of DFA, Donors for Africa. And to think that as of today, DFA has raised over $30 million in direct and indirect funding for impact-based companies is an amazing feat. Chidi, well done. Well done.
Thank you.
You're a young woman who has taken her passion and used it to enable the passion of a lot of other women. You have done well and you are doing well. And as an older woman from, intergenerational leadership, I want to tell you that you are doing well. Well done, Chidi. Well done. And thank you for organizing this forum. I look forward to speaking with the speakers and asking them questions. They are indeed phenomenal women who are nothing short of inspiring, making huge impact, not just in their countries, but globally, inspiring us in all the different places that we are. I think that that's absolutely amazing. So Chidi, I want to welcome Sechem. I was going to say, please correct me if I make any wrong pronunciations. It's not intentional. So Chidi, correct me right away because I want to honor everybody's name. So Sechem, welcome on board today. Miss Modi, welcome on board as well. Halima, welcome on board today to today's discourse. It's a complete honor to speak with you all. As Chidi introduced, my name is Hajara Quiton. I'm the General Counsel of the Amazon Energy Group, and I have practiced law for 19 years in Nigeria. And today's topic, when she told me advocating for intergenerational leadership in development, it actually spoke a lot to my heart because I can point to women who have helped my journey. I can point to when I first started law in the law firm of Babalaki & Co. We had a senior female lawyer, Mrs. Funke Aboyade. She's a senior advocate of Nigeria now, and she was a journalist at the time, or she used to write. But I recall her taking interest in how I wrote, in how I presented myself, in how I dressed and showed up to work, and how I showed up at meetings. And I know that that training was 19 years ago, but today I still carry her with me on my journey. I carry all the women that have honored me by teaching me something on my journey. Mrs. Okonjo of Fine and Country West Africa and International Women of Worth Network. I carry the ones that I don't see. I carry Maya Angelou and her grace and her ability to speak. I carry Oprah Winfrey and her ability to face the truth. I carry all of us on my journey. And so today I can't wait to hear of your journeys and how you got there and how the ladies coming behind you will get to the pinnacle of their own journeys, knowing that no two journeys are the same. No two journeys are the same. Everybody's path is different, but we climb on the shoulders of giants as we learn from one another. So welcome to an exciting afternoon of conversation. Welcome. So I'd like to start our speakers who are online. I see you, Modi. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you tell me how you would like to be addressed, please? I don't want to address you wrongly. Would you like to be called Mrs. Mukenge?
You can just say Mwadi.
Mwadi, yes. Nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you
Mwadi,
too.
can you tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey to this role?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to this exciting event. I am also very honored to be here with Donors for Africa and to be here for the African Women in Development Conference and Awards. I applaud all the awardees and I'm looking forward to exchanging with you. My path in international development has been very intentional. I am Congolese and came here at a young age, but I always had my sights on doing something for the African continent and being part of the solution in terms of how Africa was perceived. And so I was, as an African growing up in the US, I saw a problem. I saw a problem with the portrayal of the African continent. I saw unequal trade relationships, and I saw an aid infrastructure that was very problematic. And I also saw the lack of African voices in African development initiatives. And so that really spoke to me. And I feel that, once you see that problem, you sort of prepare yourself in terms of what career path you want to follow. And so I started to prepare myself. And this had to do with the courses that I took as an undergraduate, being in the US, but, focusing my studies on international relations, political science. And I wanted to be part of writing a different narrative for the African continent. That's why I pursued this path. And so I talked to people who are already in the sector. I took the appropriate courses. Actually, and then in my family, the experience of my parents and family still in Congo, just hearing about that and being in touch with people back home. I kept up my French, and a lot of doors have been opened because I kept up my French language. And then also developing writing skills. I think that being in the development sector, you're often called to write a lot. And so I made sure that I developed good writing skills. And I even wanted to be a journalist at some point. And so that was part of my journey. And then I would say that a very important part of it also was just pushing for opportunities. I would see people working in the sectors where I wanted to work, and I would call them. I wanted to have a conversation, and I wanted to actually have a job in those organizations. And what happened after graduate school is I was working at the University of California in Los Angeles, and we were bringing people on campus to speak about African human rights, African development and politics, and also development issues, social political issues. And there was an organization just in the neighborhood who did a lot of work and would come and share their project results, their the findings from the work they were doing with women, particularly on women's health. And I was very interested by the way that they worked and the kind of impact they were making on the ground. So I kept calling them every 3 months. I would call and I would say, do you have a job? And I wanted to be in a position where I would actually be in an international organization. And so I kept calling for about 1.5 years. And wow. I even volunteered to be to do work for them on a self-financed trip. So I took my own trip since nobody else was going to hire me yet. I took my own trip and did some work for 3 organizations. And then when I came back about 6 months later, I called that organization again. This time they had a job. So that was the Pacific Institute for Women's Health in Los Angeles. That was the first time I had an international role as a program manager. And I stayed there for 5 years. And I knew that, some of the skills that helped in that job were, not only my academic preparation and the cultural, awareness of what was happening on the African continent, but also the open-mindedness I had, because the project I was hired for at one point came to an end after 3 years, but then I was exposed to a lot of health projects that the organization was also running and asked to support those programs and lead some of those programs. And so I was able to appreciate with a very keen eye how women's ambitions and women's lives are so impacted by the lack of decision-making on reproductive rights and the lack of power that women had in their relationships. And so that's how I sort of made that transition from focusing on politics and international relations on looking more at the realities of women. Because I think as dynamic members of our society, we need to also have that choice to make sure that we can make decisions about our families while at the same time going for leadership roles.
Wow. Wow. I applaud you, Moadi. Well done. Well done. Your
Thank you,
journey
Hajra.
seems to have been a very interesting one. And just for all the ladies listening, I just want, because we're talking about intergenerational leadership, we're talking about taking the nuggets from her journey and, you know, applying them to your journey. You know, so from what I heard from Moadi, one of the first things she said is she saw a problem. So one of the first things we're doing is identifying what problem am I here to solve? What problem do I feel maybe not yet qualified to solve, but do I feel a strong pull to solve? So that's a first point that she made that is so important. She also said she took the appropriate courses, and she said the journey was very intentional, meaning that when you identify the problem, you also start to look at the pathway. What is the pathway to adequately be positioned to solve this problem? So there's an intentionality. There was an intentionality to her journey. So for a lot of us on this call, if you haven't been intentional, or if you've gotten to where you are, but haven't been as intentional as you should be, that's a tip to take away now, to say, what is the pathway? And I want to find it and follow it. Moadi also said she kept up her French. That was so important. You know, I like that fact because it's easy. I mean, I'm Nigerian. I speak about 5 Nigerian languages, but it's easy when you go to diaspora to focus on fitting into that society and lose what connects you to home. So she kept that up. And because of that, it's given her more dexterity, more flexibility, and then she's more attractive to the world in general in solving the problem because she can marry different continents, different, you know, languages, different demographics. So that's an important point to note. And yours might not be French. Yours might be your knowledge of Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa. Keep that up. She talked about honing her writing skills. She talked about pushing for opportunities to work because ladies, we know that a lot of the time we suffer from the imposter syndrome. We're thinking, oh, let me not ask, let me be nice, let's not push. But you heard her, she pushed. And then what was more, she created her own table. She said, they're not funding, so I'm going to self-fund a trip. That's a very good point to bear in mind. And she also said she kept her awareness of the continent in view and changed her focus as she saw another problem. So one path was not the only path, there were other paths. Thank you so much, Moadi. Can you also share some of your biggest challenges were on this journey, and maybe also share, give us some nuggets as to women who mentored you along the way. What did you learn? What would you like our audience to leave with at the end of this conversation?
Thank you. As I think about my path in international development, I think that you know, the reality of long-term funding for the work that we do. And so I've always worked for public organizations. The Pacific Institute for Women had to raise funds at the same time that we were implementing programs. And then I went to the Global Fund for Women, where also it was a public institution. And so we raised funds that then we re-granted to women's rights organizations around the African continent in terms of my specific portfolio. And where I am now at IPAS, we also fundraise and, you know, then implement programs and provide technical assistance around the world. And so the job of articulating the value add of our work, articulating the mission and the change that we want to bring about, this is a constant thing that you have to do when you're talking with donors and when you're trying to find a match between what you do and the work that they want to support. And so that's something you just have to develop over time. Sometimes they have a different interest. Sometimes they don't see the connection. We definitely put an emphasis on intersectional approaches to issues. So for example, if a donor is just interested in say, education, but you make them see the link between education and gender-based violence. If they're only interested in humanitarian issues, for example, you let them see what are the unique experiences of women in humanitarian settings. And so it's important to apply that framework when you face the challenge of donor interest. Also thinking about when you're ready to make a transition to a different job, it's so important to keep constant relationships with people in the sector, with women who you admire that you've reached out to. Don't be shy, definitely. Believe it or not, I used to be extremely, extremely shy, but I learned, particularly in the American context, there's no room for shyness. There really isn't. You have to become comfortable in your own skin. You have to be clear about what your goals are and what you bring to the table. And so one of the gaps that I saw in the development sector is that at a particular time, there was no interest really in working in Francophone Africa. So I kept pushing to say that we have a big gap in women's human rights. We're not paying attention to what's happening to African women in Francophone countries. There are barely any dollars going there. And over time, we started creating a portfolio at Global Fund for Women on Francophone Africa, which I led. And over time, donors started coming to us and say, well, how are you doing this? Because the problem seems so vast and we don't have the language skills. And I kept telling them there are women activists there that are doing dynamic work. And so we started having circles with donors and inviting them on trips that we took to the region. We organized convenings, and now you see so much interest in Francophone Africa. And so even when there's limited interest in the issues that you see as a challenge or as a problem in your community, keep pushing until you can bring other people along. And in terms of people mentoring me, definitely I've had people mentor me. I think that the people that I worked with at Pacific Institute for Women's Health were definitely mentors and people I stay in touch with up until today. And, so we've known each other forever. We've known each other forever. And then at Global Fund for Women, I was able to meet so many dynamic women. I was really honored to meet women from all over the African continent. And so what we did is that we created an advisor circle. This was intended to be a network of women and leaders who could inform our strategies. Because sitting in the US, we needed people who were grounded in the social political context and women's rights movements that could inform us. And so I really listened. I listened to these mentors, their knowledge. They helped me shape our strategies, our convenings, our grant-making strategies. And so these are women that I continue to stay in touch with today, even though I'm no longer at Global Fund for Women, but they really made a very, very big difference in my life. They made a very big difference. And I would say also the people who pushed for me to be considered for specific positions. The woman who really made a case for me when I was going from Pacific Institute to Global Fund for Women. The woman also who helped me with interviews or know about jobs that weren't being posted when I was ready to make other transitions. And so people have been generous with their time and their connections and resources, but we should not be afraid to ask. We shouldn't be afraid to ask.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Moadi. We've learned so much from you in this time. Thank you. Thank you. I love some of the points you've made, and I just want to reiterate them for the women. I like the fact that you mentioned advocacy. So even when there was you had to show the link between the problem and what the donor agency or the agency was doing, such that where they couldn't see it, you had to advocate for the people by saying, this is the problem that it will solve, and this is how the problems are linked. So ladies, that's an excellent takeaway, that sometimes, especially when you're looking for funding for your impact-based business or for your impact-based work, it can sound like, oh, well, you're not within our demographic. What problem you're trying to solve is not what we were set up to solve. But you have to do the extra work, meaning you have to be convinced about it. You have to create the causal link and show them why their funding should be directed towards you. I think that's an amazing point. Thank you so much for that, Moadi. I also like the fact that she mentioned relationships with the people who are on ground. So, you who acts as an in-between, you still have to have the network of the ladies or the network of the impact-based organizations that are on ground in the places where you're looking to solve the problem. So for us in Nigeria, it can be whatever, depending on what the issue is, it can be with the schools, with the teachers, with the market women. those might be the networks you need to nurture. So I like the fact that Mwadi said, mentioned that. I like the advisor circle. I like the fact that she mentioned the sponsor and she mentioned listening to them. So, you listen to assimilate the information. You then sift as appropriate for your own journey. But we always keep our ear open and our hearts open to take wisdom from the generation that has gone before us. So thank you so much for your time, Mwadi. This has been excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. I see Halima has joined us at the moment. Halima, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Oh, wow. You look beautiful today. Happy International Women's Month.
Thank you so much. Very,
Yes.
very happy.
Yes. Awesome. I saw your profile. I think you're absolutely amazing. When I read it earlier, I told Chidi I was going to say, yay, you. Well done. Well done. Yes. And because you inspire not only me, but all the women on this call, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell us how you got where you are right now. And, maybe share some of the challenges that you met along the way and how you overcame them to get where you are.
Thank you so much for the questions. I think I would just like to start by saying that I'm so honored to be here. I actually took the time yesterday to read every single profile of the award of the women who would be distinguished, and it's really a pleasure and an honor to be among such a group of women who have passion for development and who are actually making the case on the ground. And thank you, Moadi, for your contribution. I think this is actually what intergenerational leadership is about, really sharing with us, the younger generation, so that we can learn from you and take it as we go. So you've asked me to talk about my journey as in international development. I think it goes really way back, and I think much of what I'm doing in international development was informed by what I did in Niger Republic. So if I hadn't done the grassroots work that I did when I was back home, I don't think I would be where I am today. Which is to say that we should never discount the work that we are doing, because that can be the foundation for us if our intent is to aspire for international work in the future. So I started quite young as a community organizer in Niger, working in rural areas around the issues of girls' education, child marriage, initially as part of the youth parliament of my country. So it was a lot of advocacy. And then fast forward, I got a scholarship to come and study in the US. And while I was here, I think the questions and what I had seen being at home in terms of the conditions, especially of women and young girls in rural areas, had been questions that I had never forgotten. They were always really with me, bugging me. What can I do to make a difference in my own country, on my own continent, but also in how we see development? Because as Moadi has said, I think a lot of how development is done or was done really demands change. Oftentimes, there are voices that could be critical to the discussions that are not there. So how do we change that? So while I was doing my undergraduate degree, we, with a group of other African students, we decided, you know what, why should we have to wait until we're done with our studies to begin not only changing the narrative on our continent, but also contributing. So we came together and started, like a small group of 5 of us initially, started Harambe Entrepreneur Alliance. And I see that there's actually a Harambean in the group. So hey to the Harambeans in the group. We started it in 2007. And I remember when we started, there were so many naysayers, people telling us, oh, you're just students, you can't really do much. We've seen many of you come and go. This won't last a year. Well, now we are, I think, 13 years down the road, and it's going strong. This is to say that you may start something small, and when you do, especially when it's something quite unusual, you might encounter a lot of negativity. You know, people that might try and tell you you can't do it or it's not possible. So don't, I think, don't give up in that sense. But most importantly, I think for us, what has been effective at that time was surrounding ourselves with people who like-minded people who are passionate, but also who believe that we can make a difference. So I think that was following my when I ended my studies, or the first round of my studies here in the US. I really just felt the need to be home, to be on the continent. So I would say my first, you know, after the Harambee experience, my first real international job was in Washington, D.C. And everybody thought of it as a dream job, you know, stay there. It was initially an internship, but there was a possibility of actually starting as a staff. Um, but I just didn't find my feet, because at that point in my life, I was looking for an experience that would allow me to grow differently, that would allow me to learn. And the thing with international development is that, yes, it is development about policy, about programs, but at the end of the day, development is about people. And for me, I wanted to be, I think, more so than ever within rural communities, to better understand what are the realities, what are the challenges, really, what it is that we don't see in um, research papers or policy papers that we read. A lot of them, I think, oftentimes harsh stereotypes about women, and especially African women in rural areas. I really wanted to be able to unpack that. So I went home, and I was really, I think, as an African, you know, when you come to the US, everybody tell you to just stay and try and make it there. For me, home was where I wanted to be. So I went, and without really much of many prospects, I started working as a volunteer initially at UNICEF. And within 2 months, I was given a full-time consultancy. And I would like to say here that without the boss that I had, who was a woman, actually, I don't think it would have been possible. So we often hear the narrative of women being other women's worst advocates. For me, it honestly hadn't been, well, there had been instances where it happened, but in this particular case, it was quite the opposite. She really, in many ways, has helped me spearhead my career by giving me that opportunity and by believing in me. I don't know if I'm going too long, or should I?
No, you are not. If you are going too long, I will indicate. You're right on track.
Okay.
Please continue. Yes.
Okay, sure. So that was my work at UNICEF. Two of the most, I think, instrumental years for me in terms of growth, in terms of learning, but also in terms of understanding dynamics of development in the ground. I'd had opportunity to work with the government, I think 5 different ministries at the time, and over 100 villages. So it was really, I think, at that moment, just a moment of growth and a moment of understanding development better. And it was following that experience that I had I had gotten my scholarship to come back and study at Harvard University for 2 years. And after that, I started working at the World Bank. And my transition from Harvard to the World Bank, um, I would say, was also, it wasn't honestly planned, because I didn't see myself working initially in that institution. But one of my professors was tasked by the president of the bank at the time with putting together a team, actually an intergenerational team in a way, you know, a team of senior people at the bank, but also, you know, younger people who had an understanding of development issues. And he asked me to join the team, and that was how I joined. So to this point, what I would tell my colleagues here is that reputation is really important. I think I've heard it said by, it was, I think, Madeleine Albright, your reputation is your resume. So if you have, I think if you leave a trail of being somebody who's reliable, being reliable, dependable, somebody who can deliver, um, having, I think, also living the being seen as somebody who's prepared all the time. And they have heard this over and over again from women, that, well, from women leaders, but also just, I think, broadly speaking, for people who can be a minority at the table, but who want to push the agenda forward, you have to come prepared. I think because I've done that for so long now, it's become a second nature. Knowing that I am a woman currently, at the Security Council, the only woman on my team of like 20 men, you just need to be. You can't afford to come unprepared. You know, yeah. I think that's, and being prepared also, I think, implies that you have to plan effectively. Sometimes things might seem accidental, but a lot of time what seems accidental is actually careful planning. And to this, I join the previous speaker on the question of intentionality. Intentionality is really is important. It's critical. So I think going back to the journey in international development, while I was at the bank, I really, really liked it. I learned a lot in a very short amount of time, and was working on projects primarily in Nigeria, actually, and a few other African countries. I think I just realized that very quickly, if I stayed, that I was going to hit a glass ceiling,
Yeah.
because of how I had started, because of where I was, and because also of the fact that I saw in many of the meetings, and the key conversations that were happening, I think the people that were really driving them were people who had a certain intellectual baggage, and I felt I wasn't where I wanted to be. So I applied for PhD programs, and that was when I started my PhD at Cambridge 1 year later, uh, focusing primarily on development issues, in development studies, with a focus on education, doing
Yeah.
much of my field work in Niger. So I'm still not done with the PhD. Hopefully, would be done sometime in April, or maybe end of. I've submitted, so we will see what happens. Um, in terms of, I think there were a few questions that you'd asked. My Chidi, I see you. my We go way back. We met at Milid in Ghana, 2011. So you've asked to what some of the biggest challenges were.
Yes. 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 Did you want to quickly take us through some of what the biggest challenges you met and how you overcame them, and strategies?
Mhm. I think for me, some of the biggest challenges, honestly, were just they were more interpersonal than anything else. I would say just fatigue, being able to say no, setting boundaries in terms of work, and second guessing myself a lot. Uh, Fear, not of failure per se, but fear of not being perfect, and that is so. And these are things that I've had to detach myself of. Uh, I think because we are high achieving women, we want things to be excellent, perfect. Yes, let it
Yes.
be great, but perfection doesn't belong to anybody, and I think it can be really paralyzing when you're stuck on wanting to be that. And I think all of this to say that in development, more specifically, because it is by default a field where people want to be selfless in the service of others and their cause. self-care is really, really important. So you take care of others, yes, but also take care of yourself. It's important. It's critical. And what I found has really helped me a lot was surrounding myself with people who understand the issue, both men and women. Actually, I think it's especially for us women evolving in fields where there aren't, unfortunately, that many women sometimes. Having both men and women mentors and sponsors is really important. And what I mean, I think somebody had really explained the difference for me. A mentor is somebody who's going to just advise you,
Yeah.
um, and a sponsor is somebody who might not even give you advice, but who really opens doors for you, who's going to drop your name in the right places when decisions are being made. And I think that is really important. It's really it's critical. Um,
Thank you so much, Halima.
you
Thank you. In the time you've spoken, we've gotten so many beautiful and useful nuggets. First, I have to say again that you look amazing. So your skin is glowing through the screen. So that self-care part, we can see the results of that. Yes. But thank you. One of the questions we're going to ask later when we get to the Q&A, what we would like to do is get all the speakers to speak, and then we'll get to the Q&A. But if if you have to leave, please let us know, and that would be fine as well. But one of the things that comes to mind is from your journey and Wadi's journey. First, you did all get to America, which for a lot of us back home can then feel like, oh, if we don't get to America, are we going to be successful? Then you've all gone to great schools. So the question can still arise that, oh, if I don't go to Harvard, if I don't get those opportunities, can I still make an impact? However, I hear from you, and thank you for making that point. You said development is about people, and you talked about coming home to be with the people. So I thought that that was a great perspective to share, because really at the beginning of this and at the end of this is impact on people's lives. So whatever the trajectory of your journey is, and that's why we're grateful for companies or for organizations like Donors for Africa that connect the people on the grassroots level to where the funding is and to the places that we can, so sort of bridging the gap between where the problem is and funding to solve the problem. So that was an amazing point, because before you made that point, I kept thinking, oh God, do we have to get to America? Not all of us will get there. Do we have to get to those schools? Do we have to be at the World Bank? So thank you so much for that point. I also like the point about volunteering at the UNICEF, and I saw a comment as you were talking where someone talked about her own volunteer experience and how that helped her as well, because there is a value to giving your time and your effort to helping. That actually shows the heart and the passion for the impact. So it creates a bridge. And what I saw from your story, and even from Wadi's story, because she self-sponsored herself at some point, is that when you go and you're excellent, like you said, your reputation is your resume. For some reason, I'd never heard that. But when you go and you're excellent, you deliver excellently, you show the passion, you do the work, and you show a hunger for learning, because we all don't know it at the beginning. Then it helps you advance. So that's a good point for all of us to take away. I'm recapping this point because the aim of this is intergenerational learning, and generational does not necessarily refer to the age or the amount of time you've spent doing something. If you've gone so far in such a short time, the rest of us who are just at the beginning of the journey gain from your journey, your accelerated journey. So thank you for that. That was such a good point. I also, I like that point as well, where you said what seems accidental is a product of careful planning. So that is something I think, we should all hold on to, because when you see it happening, there's planning. Like Moadi said, she was also intentional. But also, one of the things that you said that was of great benefit, I mean, I'm gaining so much from this conversation. So Chidi, thank you for asking me to moderate it. Yes, but one of the things that you said that was so powerful was at the World Bank, knowing when the time to exit is right. So it's not just about getting yourself in the position, getting yourself at the right tables or on the big tables. At some point, you have to say, is this table driving the impact that I want to achieve? Remember, because at the end of it, at the beginning of it, and at the end of it is people. So that's a good point to remember. People, are you making impact? So Halima, too, thank you for honoring us with your time. That was so amazing. I've learned so very much. I'm going to, I hear that we have with us now Patience, and we have Secheme on the line. Sechem, please, when you come on, please tell me the correct pronunciation. So Sechem, are you on the line with us now? Okay, I don't see your screen. I would really love to talk to you if you're here. Okay, if you're not here yet, we also are meant to have Miss Patience Ekelba. Are you on the line as well?
Yes, hello.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well done. Welcome.
Thank
How are
you.
you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing very
Awesome.
well. Yeah.
Awesome. So good to see you. Yes,
Thank
so yes, welcome. So we've been asking questions today, and we've been having a great time learning from the wonderful women who have, spoken to us. And we can't wait to learn from your journey as well. I would like to say, please share with us some nuggets to the younger ladies on how you landed your first international role. Share with us the challenges that you went through on the journey. Also share with us what you think they can take away to make their own journeys easier. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by bringing you greetings from my principal, Miss Comfort Lamptey. She was originally invited for this conference, but she has asked me to represent her. So Madam Comfort is the country representative to UN Women, Nigeria and ECOWAS. And she has asked me to extend her regards to you and to congratulate all those who are on this conference today. We align ourselves with what the African women in what your organization is doing. And of course, with this particular conference, the theme is very germane. And we're very excited because most of the things you're doing actually aligns with what UN Women is doing to promote women. So we stand in solidarity with you. Before I share some of my personal experience, I think I would like to respond to the first three questions I was given while this event was being planned. Without distorting your flow.
No, that works. That works. We just want you to flow into us. So that works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the first thing you had asked, you wanted to know about the commitment of UN Women in promoting women to attain leadership position in development, especially. So UN Women is the United Nations entity for gender equality and women's empowerment. Currently, we have three major mandates that we're working to promote. We promote normative standards to ensure that the different governments that we work with are able to adapt and adopt global standards, laws, and policies to ensure that we address issues of impunity and the rest of them. We also work to coordinate some of the work that is going on around gender equality and women's empowerment. And lastly, we do what we have this operational mandate. So our operational mandate actually is what allows us to work with civil society and some partners, women groups, both at national, state, and local government areas. In Nigeria currently, we actually have 4 thematic areas in which we work. We're working on women political empowerment. We're working on women's economic empowerment. We do a lot of work around women, peace, and humanitarian action. And of course, we're also doing a lot around ending violence against women. And we actually adopt both a standalone approach and mainstreaming issues of violence, ending violence into all the work that we do. And of course, women's leadership is so germane and so important. Hence, we also use these other programs that we do generally to promote women's leadership, because that is why we exist. And then specifically responding to your question about how we're promoting women's political empowerment, there's quite a lot of things we're doing. We're working to ensure that, current legislations are enabling for women, and then we're trying all we can to make sure that, relevant bills are passed. For example, the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill is one of the bills that we're putting our weight around. And then there's also a lot we're doing around legal reforms. Currently, we're supporting the constitutional review that is ongoing. And part of what we're doing is to make sure that we review discriminatory practices that are enshrined in this constitution. And what we are hoping is that these discriminatory practices will be expunged, and then affirmative action will be adopted. We're also doing quite a lot around electoral reforms as well. We're working a lot with INEC and so many other partners to make sure that even young women are able to run for election. They're not just voting, but are also voted for. So these are some of the things we're doing. And we're inspiring young people, training them, building their capacity to understand the dynamics of elections, how it works in Nigeria. And one of the outcomes of that is the fact that the young people have established for themselves a network, for young women in politics. And they are engaging and they are forging solidarity in these groups. In this group, we're also helping to address violence against women. You and I know that this is one big bane of politics in Nigeria. A lot of women are afraid to come out because of the experiences they have seen with other women. So we're building this capacity of state actors like security agencies to ensure that they address violence that affects women in election. We have also trained legislators to ensure that relevant bills are drafted and they are passed into law to address some of these gaps. We've also gone ahead to do some studies in the past, making sure that there's evidence around the participation of women in different political parties, because it is this evidence that guide our advocacy. And a lot of other things we have done, training, making sure we also support women who are vying for offices. So these are some of the things we've done. And then to respond to your second question, you wanted to know some of the things.
Can I come in before you? Yes, I just wanted to say, when you describe what UN Women is doing in Nigeria, I just want to say thank you for existing. Thank you. Because you seem to be covering the entire gamut of our existence, as well as the major problems we face. So thank you so much. These organizations, they exist, and because they exist, we might not know that we have people fighting for us behind the scenes, making things happen, things that we're not, especially in a country that is growing, because I refuse to refer to us as third world, but in a country that is growing, yes, in a country that is growing, there is the tendency to focus on basic human needs.
Exactly.
Food, education for your children, survival. So it's easy to not focus on the larger struggles. So with UN Women, with Donors for Africa, with all the impact-based organizations, I have to say a big thank you for the impact that you're making to our lives while we go on trying to live. So thank you. Now you may go on to the next set of questions.
Thank you very much. Even before I go to the next question, I also want to thank civil society, because UN Women exists because of the advocacies women's group, of civil society. They knew that, you know, having an agency like UN Women would actually help, you know, center stage the issues of women. So while you're thanking us, we're also thanking every woman, every group that has contributed to making sure UN Women exist. We actually turned 10 years last year. We used to be UNIFEM, but we're UN Women now. So thank you all the same. I'll go on to the second question about, you wanted us to share key learning from the recent mentorship program that we did. 2019, UN Women decided, 2019, we were actually preparing for the 25 years of Beijing. I'm sure some of you know about Beijing. So 25 years ago, some women from different parts of the world gathered in Beijing, China, and the whole, you know, interest was to see how the issues that affect women could be addressed. And as part of commemorating these 25 years, we felt that it was time to actually bring young voices and even the voices of women who were at Beijing. So specifically in 2020, we brought, actually 2019, we brought some of these women together, 25 of them who went to Beijing, and then we brought 25 women, younger women who are doing extraordinary work in their own respective areas. And then it was an evening of just sharing, learning from one another. Honestly, the young people were so inspired. The older women were able to tell us, you know, Beijing, what they were doing, some of the learning from Beijing itself, you know, coming back, what has happened and all of those sort of things. And then we also had an opportunity to look at the 12 critical areas of Beijing platform, Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action. What gains, what progress have we made? What gaps exist? And what should we be doing to accelerate the kind of progress that we want to see? So it was a beautiful evening. The young people were able to share their own experiences, the older women shared, and then we felt that we needed to take that beyond that evening. So that was how the structured mentorship was actually conceived. We reached out to one of our partner, WISCA, Women in Successful Career. We spoke with them and said, look, this is what we'd like to do. We'd like to have a structured mentorship program where these young people can be paired with these older women so they could have one-on-one session with them, learn from them. We could also have webinars where critical issues that have to do with the movement could be learned and shared. And this was what happened. Over 8 months, let me put it that way, despite the COVID-19, we were able to actually run the mentorship program. So the young people were learning from the older one, you know, on their own. We had these webinars on different topics, relevant topics. We also set up a WhatsApp group where they could learn from each other, network, and, you know, also collaborate on some things. We came to the climax with a joint project. You know, the young people came together, decided areas where they could, you know, collaborate. They wrote different proposals, you know, quality and fundable proposals. And then, of course, we had a closeout. But in terms of the learning, one big learning that we got from doing this is the fact that a lot of skills and knowledge could actually be, you know, transferred when this kind of platforms are created. And we have to be deliberate about it. So it's not something we should just allow to happen when it should happen. We need to do more of this because a lot of learning actually happened during this period. And then the young people too were able to ask questions. Some of them have, you know, NGOs that they are running, and some were struggling. During this whole process, they were able to learn, ask questions about how to improve what they're doing and all of that. So we believe that one of the ways we can actually transfer, you know, history, one of the ways we can transfer history, some of the gains from the earliest women's movement, is actually to transfer this to the younger ones. I actually forgot the highlight of this whole mentorship was when the older women symbolically handed over the torch of power to the young people. Even though it was just a ceremonial thing, it was actually something that, you know, ignited power within these younger ones. And a lot of them have actually shared with us what that process has done for them. Even though the program seems to have ended, it has not ended, because this is when, you know, the real deal has actually started. A lot of them are going back to enhance what they're doing with their NGOs. They're connecting, they're working together, networking, and also, you know, a lot of them are also taking part in some of the things that UN Women is doing globally. And that takes me to the third area. I don't know if you have any question here. You also wanted to know, you know, what are some of the ongoing programs that we have that women can participate in. So I've mentioned different work that we're doing. So from women political empowerment to women economic empowerment to women in women peace and humanitarian action to ending violence against women. All of this program, people can take part in them. It's just that because of resources, sometimes, you know, we actually choose states where some of these things happen. But at the national level, there's a lot we're doing. We're working with the Ministry of Women Affairs and so many other relevant ministries, departments, and agencies. And we're also doing everything we can to make sure that, you know, our laws are actually in place. For example, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, before COVID, several states did not pass that law. But we were so surprised during the COVID because of the increased advocacy. Of course, there was increased violence against women during the period. We just saw several states actually, you know, speeding the passage of those laws. So these are some of the things we're doing. And then we also have this Generation Equality campaign that we started as part of the Beijing Plus 25 campaign. What we are saying is that we want a crop of young people to actually take on the baton. A lot of our older women have done a lot for us already. They have broken the glass ceiling. Even just listening to some of the people you brought, so many things have already been done. Now we want the younger ones to actually take on this baton, continue to run, and some of the barriers that are still there, we want to make sure that these barriers are actually pulled down. So thank you. These are some of the things I wanted to share broadly from what UN Women is doing. I don't know if you have a question or you want me to move on.
Totally amazing. Well done. Well done. I mean, it's amazing. Thank you for the work that you do. A major thing that I hear, that I heard, and a major conversation that has come out of this pandemic is how there's a health pandemic and there's a pandemic of violence against women going on as well. Because the situations have changed so much for economically for a lot of people, women and children have taken a harder hit than any other segment in society. So it's really good to hear that of the work that the UN Women is doing and the work you're doing, particularly in Nigeria, and how it's impacting our lives. Thank you very much. I also like the example you gave of the symbolism where they passed on the touch. Chidi, I also have taken from her where she says that there should be greater platforms for transfer and platforms for questioning. So maybe this conversation shouldn't just happen once a year or during the International Women's Month. Maybe it should actually be something that you create a forum for every so often, where the two generations or the generations sit at the table and have a conversation that is focused on how can I do this more powerfully. I mean, when Halima was speaking and she talked about being the only woman in a room with 20 men, I thought, you know, there's so many lessons that we need to learn there that maybe today would not be the day for that, but there's so many lessons. How do you hold your own? She talked about being prepared. Where the conversation becomes uncomfortable or untoward, how do you deflect that and bring back attention to what is important? How do you advocate and sponsors? So she also mentioned what in one of her examples, Halima's example, the sponsor was a lecturer who was tasked with bringing on various people onto a panel for the World Bank, you know, so those conversations need to go on. And so maybe this is something that becomes a long-term discussion. And since you have patience on the call with us today. And since the relationship is established, maybe this is something you want to discuss more of going forward. So thank you so much, Patience, for your time. Thank you for your discuss. Please stay on if you have some time so that when we get to the question and answer session, we'll ask you some questions. I see some really good questions in the chat.
I actually have an appeal. I actually have another meeting.
Oh, so
if
please,
if you don't mind, I would like to just share a few things, maybe that would benefit some of our younger people who are here. I see that you were asking the question about, so how did you land your first job? I'm just going to summarize maybe some of the bullet points that you shared.
Yes, please.
Because I would also like them to go home with this. So
yes, and also your challenges and how you overcame them so that they can hold on to those nuggets. Yes.
Okay. So I'm currently the National Program Officer at UN Women, and I do quite a lot of things. So I lead on the UN Women's normative work with governments. I do a lot of coordination work with different organizations that work on gender. There's a development partner group that UN Women is the permanent secretariat, and I actually represent the organization in that group. So a lot of work around mobilizing people, making sure that we're able to work together as a coherent team to ensure that we get the sort of results we want for gender in Nigeria. I'm also I'm one of the violence against persons focal point. I'm also the focal point. I coordinate young people's engagement and so many other things. So when you are the National Program Officer, you seem to do everything and anything. Having said that, I think my first international job was actually Action Aid. I met a staff of Action Aid when we had like I was working for an organization called Girls Power Initiative, and I was doing quite a lot with girls. And then there was this 2 or 3 weeks conference that we had, and I met a colleague, I met somebody from Action Aid. I think what attracted me to the organization was the culture and the principles that the organization had. They were very rooted in grassroots work. They were more concerned about really addressing poverty, inequality. And for me, even before then, I had volunteered in a couple of places before working for Girls Power Initiative. I think that drew me to them. And I said to myself, one day I'll work in this organization. And it happened almost 20 years ago now. It happened, and when it happened, I got in, and the first job was I was the zonal manager for Southeast Nigeria. And I had to work a lot with young people. It was HIV then, so we're doing prevention work, also, reaching out to doing a lot of work around care support and the rest. It was interesting. I did that for a while, and I became the women's rights manager. After a while, I became the gender specialist for the organization. So it was really interesting. And what were the skills that I think, actually prepared me for this? Beyond skill, I think one of the things that has actually almost become a brand for me is the fact that I'm very passionate about what I do. And I tell people, when it comes to development, you can't do development without having a passion. So you can't, it's not like maybe a business, you're just doing it for the money. You cannot do development without passion. You must be passionate about what you do. You must sleep, you must wake up, you must dream. You must think of how to change the lives of people, that you're targeting. So for me, passion is so, so, so key. And then beyond passion, I think every development worker needs to have in-depth conceptualization skill. What do I mean? Our ability to ask the why, the why, the why. It is the why, the why, the why question that actually takes you to the root causes of problems that we're trying to solve. And if you cannot effectively conceptualize the issue, you're more or less just going to be cutting the branches of the problem. So I tell people, if you're in development and you're in for the right reason, you must be able to conceptualize. Another skill that I find very useful is ability to mobilize people. in this sector, you have to work with people, whether grassroots people, whether national, state, or whatever. You must have a strong mobilization skill, being able to convince people to see why they need to be part of the cause that you're promoting. I also talk about the advocacy skill, and I think they're connected. You must be able to talk about the issues that you're trying to change. I have gone to programs where you talk about women's rights, and then people just break into laughter. I once told myself I'll write a book called Women's Right, Not a Laughing Matter. Maybe I'll still write that. So if you do not have a strong advocacy skill, people are just going to discourage you from the path that you're trying to create. So advocacy skill is very, very important. I in the course of my career also, I've had to take on, master's degree in development. I have a master's degree in development. And yeah, I'm also hoping someday I'll be able to do a PhD. So learning, relearning, unlearning is very, very important in this sector. You must continue to develop yourself, continue to learn. As you get into the field, you must continue to learn. The thing about development is that sometimes you talk as a lawyer when you're not a lawyer. You talk like a medical doctor when you are not a medical doctor. You must be ready to learn and keep learning, because as you go on, you're going to keep, finding out a lot of things on this. And if you're not able to address these things as they come your way, it will be difficult to actually, convince those you're talking to. There are a few other things you have added. Do you think education, like the type of school attended? Yes, it's important, but some of us did not go to Harvard, we did not go to all of this, but we have also put ourselves into places where we think we can learn and get the sort of, certificate and learning that is useful for the kind of things that we do. You talked about what has been my biggest challenge. Yeah, having worked in this sector for women, I think the biggest challenge I have faced is when people ridicule an issue as serious as women's rights. For me, those were the things that really gave me nightmare when I started this career. You talk about women's rights, whether you're talking to legislators, they just laugh, because most of them can't get it. They don't know what you're saying. Having been raised by a widow, my mother became a widow before she was 30. So having lived with her, I saw what it means to be discriminated against. My mother was almost made to marry a young boy that she raised. So you can imagine, I lived this pain, I saw it with my own eyes. And for me, when I wake up every day, it is, how do we change these obnoxious acts and practices against women? And until we're able to do that, we're not going to say it's Uhuru. And then you had some other question. How do we foster increase in generational leadership? I've said that. Currently, I'm mentoring somebody. Whisker gave me somebody to mentor while we were finishing our own program. And over the years, of course, I've had calls to, by myself, sometimes reach out to young people and say, look, there's something in this sector. You need to come and learn. Sometimes I say, okay, come and volunteer. I started as a volunteer. I used to go to there's a project, that was working with young children living with disability. I've had calls to say, okay, come and learn, come and watch. When I was working in Lut some years ago, I was working with people living with HIV. I was counseling them. I've had calls to bring young people to say, okay, just watch me today to see what I do. So it's very important that we deliberate. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well done. We've learned so much from you today. It's been an amazing conversation with you and all our speakers. I'll just point out the points that I take from you, because one of the major things that I hear you say, or I hear from what you say, is the need for representation. Another person, a man, men do, but somebody else does not know where the pain points are as much as you who carries the pain. So if women are not at the table speaking for women, then women's pain points cannot be heard. So that's women. Also in all the different spheres, and it also comes down to all for the ladies who are on, or for the women, for the audience. These are things to remember, that when you're speaking or advocating for a certain segment of society, keeping in touch with that segment is key to actually solving their problems. They need representation. and representation means hearing from them so that you know what the issues are, and so that those issues can be presented in a way that you're able to get a solution to what the real problem is. Not what the appearance of the problem is, but what the real problem is. So Ms. Patience told us that you cannot do development without a passion. So you need passion. You know, the constant rejection, the constant trying, the pain in your heart as you articulate. I've worked a lot with Chidi, and I see a passion. I see how she wants the nation to change. I see how she wants to empower people whose life's work is impact. And that is the passion that you bring to the table. And then I also see the diligence that is required in writing, in communicating, in advocacy. And those are the things that Ms. Patience has brought to the fore. She says the skill to conceptualize and to ask why. So you're getting to the root of the matter. So none of us would be in this to solve the cause. You want to go right to the root. Yes, sorry, to solve the effect, but to solve the cause so that you can change it from the roots all the way up. She talks about the ability to mobilize and convince people by whatever means that is, writing, speaking, dramatization, you know, that's why we have people like Donors for Africa. And then a hunger for learning. So whether, you know, it's on the international scene, on the local scene, from what we've heard from all the speakers, we must always be wanting to learn. The common thread that also has come through all our speakers is volunteerism, the ability to go and say, look, because I'm so passionate, I'm doing this whether I get paid or not. So remember that you know, get in there and add value, and then continue to add value, and you're likely to see growth. So that is important. But the conversation about representation is so important. Thank you so much, all of you, for your time. I want to move to Sechem if she's now on the line, because I'm looking forward to learning from her. Sechem, are you here now? Chidi, do we know Donors for Africa if she's on here?
So I'm searching for her again just to see if we've missed her, but we haven't gotten a response yet. No, I don't think she was able to join in.
Awesome. So in terms of time, it's 3:05. So I want us to move now, right, to the questions and answers. Chidi, do you have a list of the questions asked? Do we have questions that we've pulled out from the conversation so that we can start to ask them?
Yes, we have one of them asked. Someone wanted to know what is Halima doing her PhD in, and how important is a PhD degree in development?
Halima, yes, please go on.
Should I just answer or wait for all the questions? Yes. Okay.
Please answer, yes.
Okay, thank you so much for this question. So I'm doing my PhD in at the Center of Development Studies, looking at education, more specifically trying to understand the intersection between inequalities, learning, and aspirations, with a focus on, well, hopefully developing a more general framework, but with a focus on Niger. And I think it's really my initial work as a young woman in Niger that has informed my question. Throughout, I had always wondered, like I said a bit earlier, you know, why is it that some people, especially in rural areas, had access to opportunities to further their studies when others don't? Looking at young girls, I think, yes, there had been some progress in the last 10 years, thanks to the work done by, by civil society, governments, but also organizations such as UN Women, but a lot of challenges remained. So I really just wanted to unpack all the discourse around education and development studies as to whether a PhD is important for my field, or is it necessary? I wouldn't say it's necessary, because I have seen women progress to the top level. I can speak here to, so many, the current Deputy Secretary General is an incredible woman who's doing so much. She doesn't necessarily have a PhD. It's not a requirement, I would say, in international development. But for me, I really it's almost felt like a natural step in terms of what I was looking at. Um, Building expertise, especially now for us young women, I felt for me to be able to have a voice at the table that was critical, that PhD would give me an edge. It would also give me a stamp. I know it shouldn't be about stamps, but sometimes it is, especially when you are a minority on the table, to be able to say, look, yes, I do have the ground understanding, but I also bring the critical academic perspective is important. So I think that is what I would say. That's what I would add with regards to this question.
Thank you so much, Halima. I actually, I'm learning a lot from this conversation, and part of what I'm picking up, apart from just being intentional. Sorry, I didn't realize my video was off. Apart from just being intentional, is also being strategic. Looking at the landscape and saying, what do I need to be able to make the kind of impact that I need to make? So while the point has been made that you don't need a PhD, you don't need to be in America, you don't need a Harvard degree to make the kind of impact you need to make, it's also essential to look at the journey that you want to be on and what tables you need to be on to make the kind of impact you want to make. So, there's in strategy, they say two things that I really like. You have your deliberate strategy, which is a strategy that you plot and you say, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have your emergent strategy, which is a strategy that as you go along on your journey, you say, okay, at this point, I need to pivot like this, or maybe the journey itself pivots you. And then you say, these are the steps I need to take to then focus on or achieve the next thing that I need to achieve, or to make the highest level of impact. So thank you for that explanation, Halima. Thank you. It has been very helpful. Chidi, do we have any more questions you would like addressed? Chidi, you're muted.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Madam Wadi, and someone is asking, how do I, thank you so much, Ma, for the feedback you have shared concerning your ability to convince organizations to get on board your project. My question is, how do I approach conversations around funding without feeling like I'm bothering the prospective donor?
That's a very good question. Very good question. I think one of the ways that you do that is you share information about your programs or your initiative outside of when you actually make an ask, so that you think of your interaction with that prospective donor as a relationship. And so, whether it's on a monthly basis, you send your program updates. You also try to attend any events the donor is organizing. Maybe the donor is organizing a webinar. Pre-COVID, there were receptions or there were talks where donors will share their work, or they would have partners come and talk about their strategies or a new initiative. So go to these events, go to those spaces so the donors start seeing you. So by the time that you're ready to actually have a conversation, they have some familiarity with you and your work, and it's not just the ask. But at the same time, you have to be bold and just be clear about why it is your initiative deserves funding, why it's going to add unique contribution to the sector, why it addresses a gap in the sector. Be very clear about the gap that you're addressing, that you're filling, and also the fact that you're presenting a sustainable and long-term approach. You don't want to have a solution or a strategy which is seen as short-term or one-time or time-bound. You really want to look at the long-term effect. You want to look at addressing the root causes, be able to analyze and articulate that. And so don't be fearful about making the ask, but look at establishing a long-term relationship with that donor so they get to know you first.
Okay, thank you so much. There's one more question for Madam Awadi. She says, do you, sorry, Ma, you said you said you used to be very shy. I can't see that. Do you still ever deal with imposter syndrome? This seems to be one of my biggest challenges.
Not imposter syndrome. No, I am confident in my skills. I don't think about, no, maybe I don't belong here at this table. No, it's just sometimes you think about all the people out there and they're listening to you and, you know, maybe I'll forget something. So it's not about imposter syndrome. So I would tell people, be focused. You know, when you're making a presentation, definitely be focused. Have your talking points. Even after all these years, I still have talking points so that I make sure that there are some maybe 2-3 things I want to make sure in the conversation I want to get across. And another thing that I do sometimes is visualize someone that I really admire. I visualize the way that they project, the way that they present. And so you sort of try to put yourself in their shoes while you're presenting. And it's important. It's really important. You'll be in spaces. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're holding up the right book. Exactly. Exactly. And you'll be in spaces sometimes where you'll want to say something and you start over analyzing in your head, well, should I say it or is it the right thing? Just go ahead and say it. Right now, there is definitely a shift happening. There are conversations that are happening now around inclusivity and around having more African voices on issues having to do with Africa, on also making sure that funding actually reaches local organizations and organizations at the grassroots level. This is the time actually to shine and to actually bring your work to the attention of donors, to the attention of various initiatives, you know, wherever affinity groups are, to be part of those conversations, because there's a little bit more awareness now of the opportunity to do things differently. And so you want to take advantage of that opening space. You want to take advantage of that opening space. As leaders on the African continent, as young African women, you bring a lot to the table. And so there are donors. I mean, just I think, you know, because the Donors for Africa, Chidi has recognized that. There are donors who want to partner with young African leaders on these issues of development. And so you want to actually put aside that shyness and articulate why it is you're working on the issues you're working on and why you should be a partner with that particular donor.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. The call hasn't ended, but I'm leaving it to go into another meeting. I was honored to spend time with you, great women. The energy is great. I'm leaving feeling energized and I'm leaving feeling like the world will be better because you all are in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, DPP. And we're going to end the session in another 2 minutes. But please, Madam Wadi, there's one more question for you, and then we would wrap up the session. So it would be great if I ask the question, you respond to the question, and then leave us with some final words. The question is, how do I recognize, I'm new in the area of fundraising, how do I recognize donors and approach them for funding? So kindly answer the question and then help us wrap up, and then we'll move over to Halima.
There are some listservs and websites which I can forward to you, Chidi, and you can share with the audience, because you know there are spaces where donors share information about the work that they're doing and some of the trends that are happening in terms of interests and the way that donors want to work with civil society, and particularly with women's rights organizations and women's empowerment initiatives and social impact groups and entrepreneurs. And so I can definitely share those spaces and information and listservs with you, Chidi, so that you can pass it on with your colleagues. And
thank you.
You know, this has definitely been an inspiration for me, an honor for me to be part of this conversation. I want to really just encourage all of you. And, you know, as I look at your bios and see what you're doing, I'm inspired. I see that you're not waiting for somebody else to address the issues that you see need attention, you've already just jumped forward and you're saying that I can be part of the solution. And it's very, very inspiring. When we look at the fact that the youth, the percentage of youth on the African continent are in the majority, we can't wait. We can't wait. And so the magnitude of the issues that we have to address, that we want to rectify, are such that we need to harness the potential of everyone, and we need to harness that potential now. And so I really encourage you and applaud you. I applaud all of you for the work that you are doing and wish you well. Thank you so much for having me. Have a good
Thank you
rest
so
of the
much.
conference.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Halima, I also know you're extremely busy and I'm so surprised you stayed up until this point. Thank you so much. Any last words for us, please? Thank you so much.
Chidi, thank you so much for organizing this very important discussion. I learned a lot. I really did, and I'm so glad to have shared this space with these amazing women. I think I just wanted to add maybe a quick thing as to the issue of funding. I know it can be really, really hard, especially working at the grassroots level in our countries, because it's often similar to people asking for 15 years of experience but still wanting you to be 25 years old. That is what I see a lot for funding. But I think everything that Moadi has said is really true. But what I also would like to add is show results, even if it's small, even if it's as a very small scale. Funders are more willing to fund you based on the small results that you show, because they can see potential. And also, don't be afraid to apply. Like Madi has said there, this is really our time. I'm so, I feel so privileged to be a young African woman now. This is a time where we've seen a lot of firsts in terms of women making grounds around the world, and also on our continent. There's a lot of attention being given to women's rights, but also women's led organizations. There is money. Look at these various platforms. I'm also happy to share resources and apply. And another thing I will say is put yourself out there by writing. Write. If you're working on I see that there's a lot of work being done by awardees here, on access to reproductive health services, or just making things as basic as pads available to young girls. People doing amazing work with poetry. I think use your voice, and use it critically by writing, be it in blogs or for. There are lots of ways to get your voice out there and be recognized as an expert. I think it's really, really important to be recognized as an expert. And my last word would be, I think looking at the journey of a lot of African women like Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala and many others who have broken grounds. I know, understand that as a woman, sometimes you have to be twice as good to get half as far. Unfortunately, that is the world that we live in. I think let's yes work hard, but also let's push to change things in our own ways. Yesterday I listened to a discussion which was really, really important, where we're talking about misogyny in the workplace. Let's change the nature and the culture of our workplaces. And as to the idea of co-leadership, I am so happy to see younger and older women here sharing. Let's set it as a norm and it's I think it's a lot of organizations have begun to realize that they cannot do without it. We're being faced with issues such as the climate change challenge, global pandemic, where young people are at the forefront, of climate advocacy. When you look at what's happening on the ground, yes, policies are being made, but the conversations have to be intergenerational in that sense. So it is the way of the future. And I'm so glad that you're leading on this front, Chidi. Thank you.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say a huge thank you to Madam Wadi, to Halima, to Madam Patience, and even Sachem who couldn't join us. Sadly, I can't, um, I don't know why, and I can't leave the meeting to find out. Thank you so much for taking time out. The feedbacks are already coming in. People are so excited for the conversation because this doesn't happen a lot in our sector, at least from what we know. But the vision going forward is that we would find more meeting rooms, like Madam Wadi has recommended. We would find more meeting rooms, we would enlarge these conversations, we look for bigger spaces, we'll find more ways to connect generation Y or Z with our generation. We just have to find a way to connect the gaps so that we can all keep moving towards achieving the same goal. Thank you so much. And like I said, I know if you would have to leave, it's okay for us to leave while we do a bit of housekeeping.
Yeah.
You know, I would be definitely getting back in touch with every single person. Someone asked a question here, and I know that question is directed to us here at DFA, and she said, you are in a field that is new and nobody knows about you. How do you get to convince people? I think, you know, embedded in everything that was said today is one key point. Find the gaps. Sometimes we focus so much trying to explain what the problem is that we are not specific about what exactly we are asking for. I have received several proposals, partnership requests, and when you ask, what do you want specifically, it becomes difficult to point that's one or two things that can change the direction of the entire conversation. So first thing I would ask is, why you work on prison reforms and you're working with people in the prisons, what specifically do you intend the donor to do? What do you want them to do with you? You must be specific. I think once you can identify, then it's easier for them to reflect and see how they can be of support. And something else that I would also recommend as well is, even in the course of your engagement, always be clear about how you want them to be a part of your campaign, not just be clear about the problem you're solving, but also say, oh, I am aware that you work in XYZ, 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 you fund XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. This is how I believe if you come on board this solution, this is how we will be helping you meet your organization's needs. So sometimes just separating those issues and articulating them is always a problem. I've read documentations where they end up not asking for anything. The person is not asking you how much they want. They're not asking you what they need. It's just a generic proposal that has been put forward. So it's really important that you're clear about these things. Sadly, this is not a technical class. Hopefully, when you join any of DFA series launching in the whole entire second quarter of the year, DFA will be going fully into our nonprofit clinics, our nonprofit clinics for nonprofits in other parts of Africa. We've done a lot of work in Nigeria, but we are deliberately sourcing for organizations in other parts of Africa, and we'll be having 6 clinics in 3 months. So please reach out to them, ask them to get on board. A link will go out shortly for you to sign up and find out how. Please join our email newsletter, follow Halima on Twitter, follow Madam Wadi on LinkedIn as well. When we're sending the last thank you emails, you will find their social media handles that you can follow and be a part of, just to stay up to date with sort of work that they're doing. On that note, thank you all so much for staying from the start to the end of this session. I don't think anybody left the room. The numbers we started out are pretty much the same average, started off at 60, and we've pretty much kept it for only 5 people to have left the room. That shows every single person stayed until the end. I deeply appreciate you. I don't take it for granted. Thank you so much. Thank you once more to all our speakers. God bless you. And I'm really looking forward to engaging with you right after the session. We will get back to you on all the things they have promised, and we'll definitely be getting back to everybody who participated in this program. On that note, thank you so much. Thank you all so much for the kind words. God bless you, and keep doing what you do. For the women who were nominated, we are going to be signing or sending across your certificates soon, and we want you to scream and shout when you see the signature on those certificates. So we are working on getting that or making that happen. But on that note, guys, thank you all so much for such an amazing time. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And God bless you. Thank you to my team, Patience and Olamide. Well done, ladies. Well done. I have to say this in front of everyone. Well done for the work that you do behind the scenes. I deeply appreciate you. All right, guys. Have a fantastic evening. Bye. We're going to share our screen. You can listen to some more songs from my favorite African artists. Thank you. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sunday.
Lek ma gesu ci li ma weesu lek ma reccu wala sax di bàkku fugu ne yi fecc dama leen di teete wax ni mu ma neexi ma bëgg leeno damay telu kuule mel ni du ma maa damay telu kuule mel ni lu ma gën di yàgg xel mi bel ni bank lu ma gën di màgg dellu tuuti mani seetal léeg-léeg ma gëstu ci li ma weesu léeg-léeg ma réccu wala sax di bàkku fugu ne yi fecc dama leen di teete wax nu mu ma neexe ma bëgg leenoo damay dellu kuule mel ni du ma maaku damay dellu kuule mel ni du ma maaku fugu ne yi fecc dama leen di teete wax di mu ma neexe ma bëgg di lu ma gën a jege mel ni dama sore lu ma gën a
We'll send the recorded version across. Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Yes, I'm just waiting for you guys to get up. Yes, we will send it across. You get a link to watch the recording. Thank you guys.
Lek ma gesu ci li ma weesu lek ma reccu wala sax di bàkku fugu ne yi fecc dama leen di teete wax ni mu ma neexi ma bëgg leenoo damay dellu kuule mel ni du ma maaka damay dellu kuule mel ni du ma maaka lu ma gën di yàgg xel mi bel ni bank lu ma gën di màgg dellu tuuti tànk mani seetal léeg-léeg ma gëstu ci li ma weesu léeg-léeg ma réccu wala sax di bàkku fugu ne yi fecc dama leen di teete wax nu mu ma neexe ma bëgg leenoo damay dellu kuule mel ni du ma maaku damay dellu kuule mel ni du ma maaku fugu ne yi fecc dama leen di teete wax ni mu ma neexe ma bëgg di lu ma gën a jege mel ni dama sore lu ma gën a
All right, now we can end the meeting.